You know, I was trying to think how should I start this video, because there's so much that happened I don't even know where to begin. But I wanted to post an update for you guys on where we are with the 22RE and what's been going on here. So let's just start over here at the motor. Can't remember if I showed this already or not, but I've got the ceramic coated pistons in, so pretty happy about that. And I think I might have mentioned in the last video that the previous people who rebuilt the motor had the wrong rings, so we got that sorted out. Tension on these Total Seal rings is real good. I'm real pleased with that. Also, we've got the new H-beam LCE Engineering connecting rods torqued underneath the motor there. I used initially I torqued them to, I think it was 63 foot-pounds, and then I measured all the stretch on the rod bolts, which are the ARP rod bolts. And I wasn't really happy with the stretch amount. It was kind of between 4,000 and 5,000 when I was shooting for more like, you know, to just touching 6,000. So I believe I torqued those down to 70 foot-pounds, or might have been 75 foot-pounds. So the rod caps are definitely secure. Let's see what else. So looking good there. Got the connecting rods. Everything is looking good as far as the block goes, I think. And I'm very encouraged with the way the rings and everything went together. I might have shown in the last video, I used the quick seat stuff from Total Seal, which is a dry film lubricant. You put it on, and then it kind of takes on a green hue. So I was talking with Total Seal regarding that, and everything seems good there. So, and then in other news, let's see, what do we got here? I decided to upgrade a little bit and go with the ARP head studs. So these utilize a stud and then a nut on top. And in doing a little research, I noticed that it appears they have re-engineered this particular kit for the 22RE. Now, last year, these things, you couldn't find them anywhere. And then I had searched around online, and someone had mentioned that they thought maybe they were re-engineering them to have a slimmer shaft here. And the reason for that is because if you look at the 22RE, this head bolt hole feeds the entire valve train. There's a little, I don't know if you can kind of see it in there, but there's a little hole drilled in that feeds the cam. And I had seen some rumors online where people thought that maybe the diameter of the ARP head bolt was blocking some of the flow in there, as opposed to the not the ARP head bolts, but the ARP studs was maybe blocking some of the flow. And as you can see here, it does appear they've engineered them with a slimmer shaft. So that's very interesting. If you go on places like eBay and such, you can see the older style, and it's a significant difference in thickness. Now, I have not called ARP to inquire about that. I have talked to them about other issues, but in any event, these are the head bolts I'm going to run, and they say they have a real nice bolt nut on the top of the stud. So I think you're going to end up getting a more accurate torque. Now, I'm going to torque these down probably around 75 or 80 foot-pounds on the stock head bolts. I was using, I think it was 66 foot-pounds. So I'll probably target 75 or 80 on these, depending on how it feels. I've got a new snap-on torque wrench on the way also that I'm going to use for this particular installation on the head. Let me see what else. you can kind of see over here, the other night I port matched, let me grab this guy here. I port matched the intake manifold. Just kind of set this here. I'm actually, I'll cover this in a second. I'm actually sitting here lapping the valves on the cylinder head. A little short on bench space, but kind of try to show. So I port matched the intake runners, as you can see here, to the LCE Engineering cylinder head, and kind of blended around where the fuel injectors go. Try to get a little bit of smoother transition and match the gasket stuff there. So you can see I still have my machinist bluing where I marked off according to the intake gasket there. So pretty happy about that. You can see kind of smoothed up some of the areas and unshrouded the area around the fuel injector tip, and just basically kind of blended everything so it has a nice flow, and not a sudden kind of step to deal with. So I think that will kind of improve the flow of the intake. Let me set this back over here. So I'm slowly but surely knocking down all the jobs left on the 22RE here. Let me see what else. Oh, mentioned this little guy in the last video as well. I did a slight upgrade. I wasn't really thrilled with the bolts or the nuts that come on from LCE Engineering, so you can see I used some distorted top locking nuts from ARP. These are 6mm 12-point locking nuts, which are stainless steel. I think they have 180,000 PSI rating, so real nice. And then I have some little titanium washers in there to kind of spread out the load a little bit. I might have mentioned also that I'm running this 5 degrees retarded. I spoke with webcams who grinds the cams for LCE Engineering, and ran my kind of 5 degree camshaft, 10 degree crankshaft retarding idea by them, and I was quite impressed with how knowledgeable webcams was with in regards to all the questions I had. And they pretty much said, yeah, given that the Pro EFI cam has a few degrees of advanced ground into it, retarding the cam 5 degrees should be probably pretty good. So we've got the head bolts, we've got the cam gear stuff all sorted out, and then you can see I'm just kind of working on lapping in the valves, so maybe I'll cover that a little bit here. You can also see the results of the ceramic coating. So I coated the chamber, obviously, and the face of the valves. Let me grab a valve that's out here. I also coated the back side of the valve with the ceramic coating, so that'll provide some kind of protection from heat and maybe improve the thermal characteristics of the 22RE here a little bit. The other thing you can kind of see, let me shine a light in here, see if I can get it on camera. Well, it's kind of hard to see. I guess you can see it more from this way. You can see that I sprayed the exhaust runners. Unfortunately, I didn't do a very good job. So if you look in there, I mean, from a functional standpoint, it's okay, but you can kind of see there. So what happened is, initially, I used kind of a cotton dabber, like what you would use for, when you blew a firearm or something. And I tried to soak that in the Cerakote ceramic coating and then lay it down very controlled on the runners. And it actually, you can see on the roof there, it actually worked. It actually worked fairly well, except that in that little trough area, it got just a hair too thick because I didn't spray it down. and the ceramic coating bubbled up real weird. So I had to go in and kind of, you can see some various states of kind of terribleness. I had to go in and kind of scrape off those bubbles, and that left those areas where you can see two different heights. And then I had to come back and sand that and respray a thinner coat. So, not my best work ever. Excuse me. I guess I got a little too confident in how what I could do with the Cerakote there. Nevertheless, from a functional standpoint, it should still provide a thermal barrier on the exhaust port, and the little kind of, you know, slight unevenness in there shouldn't really cause any major problems, or, you know, it's going to hit the header anyways. And so the primary goal here was to try to manage the heat coming out of the motor so it doesn't, you know, expand out and warm up the cylinder head. On the intake side, of course, there's not as much issue with heat, so I didn't bother to coat those. What I'm doing right now, as you can see from this little guy, is I'm in the process of lapping the valves. And I decided I would try kind of use this as a test to see if I could improve the lapping method that I've always used. So I've always just used this, right? Very common. I've been using this probably since, gosh, 1979 or something like that. So it's a Permatex product, and it's just a lapping compound that as you lap, it kind of deteriorates down and goes from very coarse to a little bit more fine. It does a good job lapping. I tried a few other compounds, but this one really works well as far as the initial kind of lapping in part, or the kind of the coarse part of the lapping. And the reason for that is because that kind of degradation of the media or grit, going from real coarse down as you work, really is handy. I think it works better than taking like a coarse and a fine grit and alternating those. I think the transition of this is really good. Once you lap this for a minute or two and it kind of gets down to where you don't hear it making too much noise anymore, then what I've been doing is I've been switching over to using a high concentration diamond compound. So you can see this is a 50% concentration of diamond powder, 400 grit, and then I go to 600 grit, and then 1200 grit. Now, I also am going to be using, I believe it's a 3000 and then a 5000 grit diamond compound. Same company, same product. After I thought maybe the 1200 would get me where I want at the final lapping, but I think I'm going to do two more steps. So 3000 and 5000 diamond compound. And based on what I've been seeing with the, kind of with how these valves are turning out, I'm real pleased with this particular diamond lapping compound. It works exceptionally well. I really love it. And then what I am doing for the final step is using Blue Magic. So currently I'm doing, I did 1200, and then I switched to the Blue Magic metal polishing, and then polished the face of the valves. And then I use some Prussian blue to mark off and make sure I'm getting a good contact patch. And, I don't know if you can really see it here, but pull this little guy out. You can see it has a very nice finish there. And same on the seat there. I just felt like if I went, you know, 3,000 grit and 5,000 grit, it might get even a little bit better. But you can kind of see, you can kind of hear if you spin it, you know, it barely makes any noise there. So it's, let me see if I, well, I can't really, I guess maybe this little guy here. You kind of do this number. You can hear it, see, it has the faces, barely makes any noise there at all. So, like I say, I just think if I, since while I've got the head open here, if I do 3,000 and 5,000 and then jump to the Blue Magic, I think that'll be perfect. So that's what I'm working on. I've still got the exhaust ports to lap in. And then I'll be reassembling this guy. I think that's probably, oh, the only other thing, let me see, let me grab this back here. I was doing some research on different engine assembly lubes. And you can see I've got a kind of an ever-growing collection of assembly lubes here. Now, let me cover for anyone who's interested here. Oh, one thing before I forget, let me just interject here. I wanted to mention, oh, and here you can kind of see, this is the gasket I used to port match with, so you can kind of see I had to go through and cut this gasket open. Now I'm not going to use this particular gasket. I believe it's a FEL Pro. I've ordered another gasket over there in the corner that I'm actually going to run on the motor. But so since I wasn't really thrilled with this kind of whatever they've got going with this red sealer stuff, I decided this gasket would make a good candidate for port matching. So you can see how close I had to kind of cut with a razor blade to get the profile of the ports there, and then to put this up to the manifold, I have this stuff here, and I'll link these in the description for anyone who's interested. But these things are really terrific. They're little high temp silicone plugs, and they come in various sizes. This is the small size here. Over here in my little cleaning tank, got these little yellow guys, and these guys are perfect for indexing the manifold, the gasket to the manifold, and holding it while you scribe a line or work or whatever. So I've found those little silicone plugs to be absolutely indispensable while working on the motor. And what I was going to kind of show back here. So anyways, I just, and then just put this up to the cylinder head and pop those little plugs all in, and it holds it right to the cylinder head without any problems at all. So that's real handy if you're doing some port matching or what have you. Now, one thing I want to just mention here is when you're running the LCE, or excuse me, when you're running the ARP head studs, there's something you got to be aware of, and that is that there is an area inside the valve cover, on the stock valve cover anyway, where you have to grind down a couple of gussets that will otherwise make contact with the front two ARP head stud bolts. And you can see right here what I'm talking about. Now normally, see these little gussets here? Normally there's a gusset here, an aluminum one, and here that go across. And if you put in the ARP head studs and then bolt your factory cover down, those are going to make contact. So I ground those down with a little carbide bit, flushed them out here to get clearance. So I just wanted to mention that for anyone who might be thinking, oh, you know what, I'm going to slap some of those ARP head studs on. Just make sure you relieve that area on the stock valve cover. So that was one of the things I wanted to mention in this video. The other thing was with regard to the different assembly lube products. Now, to help ensure, and I don't want to go into a big thing about, you know, zinc additives and moly disulfide and all those kinds of things. There's plenty of videos on YouTube already from Total Seal or Driven Racing products that cover all that stuff far better than I can do here. But the short thing I want to say is that I'm going to use break-in oil on the motor to help the ring seat, and it was important to me to make sure that the assembly lube products I use on the motor don't interfere from a chemical standpoint with my Lucas break-in oil. So I've been on the phone all last week talking to the different companies. I'm running straight 30 weight Lucas break-in oil for the first 50 miles or so, seating the rings and everything. And then I'm going to dump that and then probably put in either Driven Racing or another batch of Lucas oil for the next 500 to 1,000 miles while the rings seat. But during assembly, I wanted to cover some of the stuff I've used here. So this is Clevite bearing guard. Really like this. I used this on the connecting rod bearings as well as the piston wrist pins where it goes through the little end of the rod. So like this stuff a lot. Very economical, doesn't cost an arm and a leg. For this, Total Seal engine assembly lube, this is what I used on the rings themselves when I put the rings on the pistons. So I coated all the rings and used a toothbrush to brush this into the ring lands, and then installed all my rings and put this on the piston skirts. And then, as I may have mentioned, I used a product called Quick Seat, which is a dry film lubricant in the actual cylinder bores in the crosshatch pattern to help the rings seat in the cylinder bores. And then on the, as I mentioned, the skirts of the pistons, I use this. Now, no other oil on the bores, only the dry film Quick Seat lubricant. Now, as far as things like, you know, the valve guides, the cam lobes and so forth, or the cam timing chain, all of that sort of stuff. Oh, and I will mention, let's see, what was, oh, I used a little extra of this around where the rod, the big ends of the rods touch the crankshaft journal. So around that kind of side area, I used this. But for things like the timing chain, gear, the guides here, the engine or the camshaft lobes, I'm going to be using the HVL driven. This is an assembly lube. It's very much like this Ultra Slick that I also like, but I'm going to use this just because I know it's compatible with some of the other products based on talking with the guys over at Driven. So this is a really good product. I'll probably soak the cam journals a little bit with this, and then they have also the engine assembly grease. I'm going to probably use this on the timing chain and the camshaft gear itself right here, and a little bit on the timing guides. Now this here is an assembly gel that is kind of very similar. It's almost in between these two products, but it really, because it's a gel, it really sticks on. And this is what I'm going to run on the actual valve train, you know, the cam lobes and the rocker arms. So this will be what I kind of put on the rocker arms and the lobes, and then I'll put some of this with the break-in oil kind of in the little pools in the cylinder heads underneath where the lobes spin. And that should get me off to the races as far as firing things up. And then I'll do purge the coolant, and then do a few hard pulls to seat the rings, and we should be in business as far as I can figure. I think that's probably the latest. I've got a new head gasket going on, and like I say, upgraded to the ARP studs. And as soon as I get the diamond paste and the 3000 and 5000 grit, I'll be knocking out the rest of this valve lapping, and we'll get this cylinder head back on the truck. So little by little we're getting there. A few more weeks and I figure I'll have the motor fired up. So like I say, just wanted to provide a little update on anyone who's kind of wondering, like, oh, you know, what's going on with the motor over there. So that's where things stand. Like I say, real pleased with how the Cerakote coating turned out, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this stands up to carbon on both the chamber as well as the pistons. And I'll be curious to see if the motor has any lower operating temperatures due to having the exhaust runners and ports coated with the ceramic. Even though I have to say coated poorly, but from a functional standpoint, I think it's going to do the job. So, okay, well, that's the latest. If you have any questions on anything I mentioned in the video, let me know. Some of the products I've mentioned, I'll try to, scare up some links for them from where I got them, and toss those in the comments section below in case anyone is wondering, kind of, hey, where do I get this or that or the other thing? So, okay, thanks very much for watching.